Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bhakti Club. So today we are doing another class on the Uddhava-gita. If you want to follow the whole Uddhava-gita course, you have to join the Bhakti Club. When you join the Bhakti Club, you have access to all the previous classes. This class will be online for 1 week and then it will be taken to the Bhakti Club and only Bhakti Club members can watch them. Alright, so today we are continuing with the verse 9. So Krishna, we're just starting the Uddhava-gita. This is just our 4th class. And what's going on is that Krishna is explaining to Uddhava why the basics of yoga philosophy. And it all started when he told Uddhava that he should go through the world in a state of equanimity, seeing things equally. That's one of the big topics of yoga. So by explaining the spiritual vision, he's explaining why you can go through the world detached and with equal vision. So now we are in verse 9. Let's get started again then. Krishna is talking to Uddhava. He says, therefore, bringing all your senses under control and thus subduing the mind, you should see the entire world as situated within the self, who is expanded everywhere. And you should also see this individual self within me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is classic yoga philosophy. These initial verses are great because if you want to understand what yoga philosophy is, these initial Uddhava-gita verses go right to the point. So, big topic, bringing all your senses under control. This is a huge topic in Bhagavad-gita, Uddhava-gita, in the path of yoga. The whole point of yoga is that you must become the master of yourself. You've heard the word Swami maybe, like you've seen some spiritual leaders with a name, with like a title of Swami, as in Swami Bhaktivedanta, who started writing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this Swami are from the words master of yourself. If you speak a Latin language, for example, I speak Portuguese, so seu amo, same words in Portuguese to this day. Seu, your, amo, master, master of yourself. So you have to become Swami, master of yourself. Why? By controlling your senses, what do? You subdue the mind. The idea is to have your mind under your control. Your mind has to be calm, deep and focused, because then you can experience these wonderful feelings of peace, of clarity of mind, of contact with your own true deep self, devotion, bhakti, contact with God. All these wonderful things await you when you calm your mind. If your mind is all agitated, if you're just running around and you're on the surface, then you don't experience these things. You're just experiencing anxiety and a kind of excitement, but like an anxious anxiety and fear. And they're completely different set of experiences in life. So yoga is telling you to go deep, to settle and cool your mind down. I love in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna talks about your mind has to be like a flame in a room with no wind. So it's that steady flame that's not flickering. So that's a nice image to have. You know, your mind has to be like that a flame that's just burning bright, but it's steady, it's not flickering around. Also the image of a very placid lake, a deep, beautiful, huge lake, super deep, but it's completely placid. It's like a mirror, the surface. That's how your mind has to be. So it's very deep, but very calm and beautiful. So we have to control the mind, subdue your mind, and then Krishna says, you will see the entire world situated within the self. Now, yourself, it's not that you're God in this world, you've noticed the world isn't situated, but you will see the world from that spiritual perspective. You'll see how the world is actually behind everything is spirit. And ultimately, you should see yourself within me, And we are within God, because you can't get out of God. In the yoga concept, in the Krishna concept, there's no getting out. You can't be outside of God, because everything is His energy. We are His parts. Krishna says, Mame Vamso, my parts. You're my parts. Mame Vamso. So we're His parts. We're in everything. In material energy, He says, it's also His energy. So everything is His. You can't get out. There is no out. There is no something else beyond God. There's not like, oh, here's God and this is something else. There isn't in the concept of yoga. It's different from the concept you might have picked up from the Western religions, from the Abrahamic religions, we say. It's different. It's not that God is just this powerful being, so much so that in the Abrahamic traditions, they had this idea, oh, there's a devil. There's this other thing, the devil, polar opposite of God. You have Jesus and the devil. So there's something outside, but no, it's not outside. It's all within. There is no outside. Also, like in the early Christianity, had the Gnosticism. So like, oh, there's this good God and there's this evil God that created the world. So they created this duality between matter and spirit. So they had this. There's like, say, a little, philosophical lines of thought in that sense in the Christian tradition, Jewish tradition, if you look deeply in these ideas, like matter is something else. You can see this in Islamic tradition as well. That's why they are completely opposed to any drawings of the Prophet, or what to speak of God, because how can you do anything in matter? Matter is so disgusting, it's so opposite of spirit that you can't, like to portray the Prophet in matter, it would be like, for us here, like making a picture of your mom out of dog poo or something. It's like, oh my God, that's so offensive. It's because it's like, oh, that's disgusting. So all of matter is like, ooh. But not in the yoga tradition. In the yoga tradition, we understand that matter is Krishna's energy. Man Maya, Krishna says, my energy. This is my Devi, this is my divine energy. He calls matter, the modes of nature, my divine energy. So you have to see with spiritual eyes the divine nature of everything, all matter, all living beings, everything within God. It's very nice. Okay, let's read the purport. The word vitatam, or widely expanded, implies that the individual jiva soul is present throughout the material universe. Similarly, in Bhagavad-gita 2.24, Lord Krishna states, Nitya Sarva Gata. The individual soul is eternal and is expanded everywhere throughout the material and spiritual worlds. There are countless souls. I mean, you can see there's so many people and insects and creatures, right? But they're all over the place, right? There's all these, they talk about how in your body there's like 1 trillion living little, bacteria, gut, in your gut. So it's like there's just endless, it's an infinite number of living beings spread all over, not only the universes, but of course in the spiritual world as well. This does not mean, however, that each individual soul is all-pervading. So this could be misconstrued. I'm like, oh, I'm all-pervading. I'm like God. I am everywhere. No, you're not, obviously. I mean, it should be pretty obvious. But, people, they kind of get into that. They want to be God. It's one of the, it's called the last trap of Maya, of illusion. It's like, okay, I'm getting all spiritual, I'm getting detached from the material world, and then I am God. And so then it's like, oh no, man, that was the last trap. You fell for now you have to get over that before you really can become liberated. So of course, we're not God and we're not all-pervading. It should be pretty obvious to anyone who has any self-vision. Rather, one should understand that God is great and expands His personal energy everywhere. In this verse, Atmanikshava Vitatam means that this material world is created to facilitate the sense gratification of the conditioned souls who are trying to enjoy without Krishna, their actual master. The living entities are busily trying to exploit the external energy of the Lord, but their jurisdiction over the material world is illusory. Both the material nature and the conditioned living being are energies of the Lord, and thus exist within the personality of Godhead and are under His supreme control. That's the thing we have to get over, the idea that we are independent controllers of matter. It's a complete fantasy. I mean, if you just look back on your life, just look back on yesterday. I mean, it's clearly you're not the master of reality, right? So we get, it's just an illusory state of mind we get into. So the correct comprehension is that actually, no, God is the supreme controller. I am, He's allowing me some minute liberty. I have minute, because I'm a minute, part of God. So I have minute independence, minute liberty. I have given you can raise your hand here a little bit, Giri. You can move it this way. For now, I'll let you, for now, because any moment, you lose your hand, you can become paralyzed. But okay, for now, I'll give you this much liberty. So you have to look at your life, and it's like according to your karma, you have this much liberty. Maybe you can see, you can talk, you can walk, and maybe you can't, that's been taken. Maybe you can travel, maybe you can't. Maybe you can breathe now, and you don't know if you'll be able to breathe tomorrow. So it's just, that's how much liberty you have now, but it's obviously been granted to us because it gets taken at any time. So if something can be taken from you at any time, it's not really yours. It's just been lent, borrowed. It's just something you have for now. So somebody else who can give and take, that is the person in power, and that is God. The individual living entity exists for the pleasure of the personality of God and is the Lord's eternal servant. So this is a classic phrase, not just from yoga, but you'll see this in other traditions. But let's understand this correctly here. The individual living entity exists for the pleasure of the personality of God. And then you're like, no, that's not fair. What is this? And is the Lord's eternal servant? No, no, I don't want to be anybody's servant. I don't want to exist for somebody's pleasure, right? So that's the feeling we get, right? In modern culture, this is shocking information. This doesn't go down well. They're like, what is this? I'm nobody's servant. I'm master, I'm not here for anybody's pleasure. I'm here for my own pleasure. So this kind of language seems a bit shocking and very unattractive. But when you really get to understand it, then it makes sense. And let me try to see if I can give you a little bit of that here. When we say that we exist for the pleasure of the Lord, you have to remember that we are actually parts of the Lord. You have to remember that all pleasure comes from the Lord. Everything comes from God. So pleasure comes from God. The name Rama, right? We have the mantra, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Ram means the source of bliss. The name, one of the most famous names of God, Ram, means the source of bliss. Krishna means the all-attractive. What happens when you have something attractive in front of you? It's nice, isn't it? Isn't it nice to be in whatever is attractive? It's nice if it's food, painting, a person, whatever, but something attractive is like, wow, it's nice to be in the presence of something attractive. So Krishna is all-attractive. So when we talk about that, it's like, no, we're the ones who are going to be maximizing our pleasure and joy and happiness in this situation, because that's who we are. Remember, we talked about constitutional position. We use this word, constitutional. That is our constitution. That's what we're made of. So when we use this kind of language, we're eternal servants of the Lord. It's not servant in the sense of a slave like we had here, like we still have in this material world. It's not a slave. It's not a low salaried worker. We're not talking about working at Amazon or something. We're talking about, really just blissing out. Pleasure is just like serving like a mother serves her loving baby, newborn baby, like a father serves his children, like a lover serves, his lover, her lover. That kind of service is what we're talking about. Okay, it's not service like, oh, I'm scrubbing the decks here, I hate this job. No, it's not that at all. It's just the pleasure of loving, of doing something out of love, of experiencing bliss and love. That's what it's all about. As soon as the senses become absorbed in material gratification, which is the opposite of this. Okay, so the opposite of this loving connection, this feeling of oneness with God, of bliss, of love, the opposite of that is the senses being absorbed in material gratification. You see, those are the two things we're dealing with in yoga here. These are the two opposites we're dealing with in yoga. So one is the material state of mind, material gratification, just a materialist. We use this word, he's a materialist. He's just like a crass materialist. And it's all about surface, it's all about just trying to extract pleasure through your body, through your eyes and your sexual organs and your skin and your ears and your eyes and your tongue. And it's all about, that's all it is. It's like, when can I have like a good meal, a nice movie, good music, sex? That's all it is. I don't care about values. I don't care about anything else. Just self-centered. I want to have some sense pleasure. That's the crass materialist. And then the opposite of this is the loving bhakta. Just all about love and service. But then it's like, who's actually doing better? See, that's the thing. It's like, oh yeah, this sounds, this materialist, that sounds much better. So that's what people are doing right now. They're like, oh yeah, this is what I want. But no, that doesn't work. If that worked, that'd be great. But it doesn't work. So what happens when people try to do that, and we've all tried it, life after life, and I'm sure we've done, lots of times in this life. Yeah, it just comes with like anxiety and frustration and disappointment, and it doesn't really happen, you get saturated, like oh, it's nice eating good food, right? But then if you eat too much, then you feel bad, you get sick, and sex, it's like it's really not, but then then you have relationships, and then like unwanted pregnancy, and like all this trouble, and like, oh, I destroyed my relationship. It's like all these things, it's like you have to deal with it. In the end, it's not, there's a reason why you're not having sex all day. It's because, and after a while you don't even want it anymore. It's like, oh God, I can't take it anymore. It's like, so it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you start watching a movie, it's like, okay, it's nice, but I don't know about you, but I'm like, after like, oh my God, I can't, I don't even go to the cinemas anymore because I can't, because movies became really late. In the past, movies were like an hour, in like an hour and a half. Remember, like in the 90s, like an hour and a half. But then they became like 2 hours and 2.5 hours, and then they even did like 3 hours. It's like, I can't take it. I cannot sit there for 3 hours. I'm going crazy. Like after like half an hour, 40 minutes, I'm like, okay, I gotta move, man. I gotta get out of here. I don't care what, how many hundreds of millions of dollars in the budget there. It's just like, I can't take this, man. It's too much. It's like a torture. Like you're torturing me, like having to sit here for, so, it doesn't work. But love, you don't get tired of love. You don't get tired of devotion, of bhakti, of, the pleasure of purpose, of serving. That doesn't get tiresome at all. That makes you happy. That makes you like just balanced and happy and enthused. So that's what we're talking about here. The actual goal of sense activity is satisfaction of the absolute truth, Vishnu, the Lord. And all of the senses can experience infinite spiritual pleasure by perceiving and serving the Lord in His personal feature. This is the point. You can actually experience infinite pleasure through spiritual connection. And everybody who experiences this is a wide testimony, you'll see, from all over the world, from all ages. People have been testifying to this. You know, I'm just like the guy who's doing it right now, but so many people are doing it because they're experiencing it. And they're saying, hey, you should try this. It really works. You know, that's what's been going on since time immemorial. People are like, hey, this really works. You should try it. This thing, this spiritual connection, this is actually much better than anything else I tried before. So all that, all the stuff, the 5-star hotel, the first class, and the jet, but this is better. It's like, what? Yeah. So you try it. If one engages, those who adopt the impersonal conception of God, however, try to stop all sense activity. But because the senses cannot remain permanently inactive, they naturally return to activities in the realm of material illusion. So you see some spiritual paths that, you know, it's like it so doesn't work. You don't even see it that much anymore. But still people have this fantasy. Still you see people like advertising this kind of spirituality. Like, oh no, I'm just going to stop everything. I'm going to just cease everything because I don't want to be in matter. So, you know, there's no God because it's an impersonal conception where God is, you know, I'm God. So I just have to stop everything and just stop my mind. But it doesn't work. You know, it's like, oh yeah, you can do it for like, you can do it. Basically, you can't do it. But you think you can do it for a little bit. But you can't do it forever. It doesn't work. And then if you don't have this spiritual path of bhakti, of connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what you're left with is you're back in the material world. It's like, okay, I better do some stuff here because I'm bored of just sitting there. So then you just get back into material world, usually like, you know, doing nice things, which is good, you know, doing mode of goodness things. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this hospital. And nice, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, you're still missing out on the supreme higher taste. If one engages the senses in the service of the personality of Godhead, then one enjoys unlimited pleasure upon seeing the transcendental beauty of the Lord's form. But unless one qualifies himself or herself by pure loving devotion to Krishna, pure bhakti, the Lord does not award him or her this exalted experience. Therefore, every conditioned soul should end his or her unnecessary separation from the personality of Godhead by rejoining the Lord's blissful company. It's very nice, isn't it? Rejoining, join, yoga, rejoining, Giridhari, religion, by joining with the Lord again. Lord Krishna personally comes down to reopen the blind eyes of the conditioned souls, and thus the Lord is personally teaching Uddhava. This is our great blessing, that we're getting this straight from God, straight from Krishna. Krishna came down, he just spent 125 years on the planet, now he's about to leave, and he's giving Uddhava the complete summary again of spiritual life, starting with these wonderful verses. I mean, we're just in verse 9 here. It's crazy, isn't it? Just these 9 verses have been so deep. We just started, and we have like years of this course left. So just starting, and it's already so powerful. It's already life-changing verses if you've been paying attention. So Lord Krishna reopens the eyes, and thus the Lord is personally teaching Uddhava so that sincere souls in the future, that's you. Sincere souls in the future might take advantage of his instructions. That is you. That is me. That's what we're doing here. Sincere souls, you're very lucky. And if you're sincere, you can take advantage of this. Indeed, hundreds and millions of people even now derive spiritual enlightenment from Lord Krishna's instructions to Arjuna in Bhagavad-gita. Okay, very good. So that was verse 9. Verse 10. Being fully endowed with conclusive knowledge of the Vedas and having realized the ultimate purpose of such knowledge in practice, you will be able to perceive the pure self, and thus your mind will be satisfied. At that time, you will become dear to all living beings, headed by the demigods, and you will never be hampered by any disturbance in life. It's very interesting. So, when you're fully endowed with the conclusive knowledge of the Vedas, Vedas, vast, Vedas means knowledge, but the Vedas include the religion of the Vedas with the demigods and, and all sorts of yagyas to advance material things by the grace of the demigods, and it includes so many things. But what is the conclusive knowledge? Veda, Vedanta, Anta, the end of the Vedas. So what is the Vedanta? This stuff is Vedanta. This is the highest Vedanta. This is the knowledge of the end, the conclusive knowledge. And having realized the ultimate purpose of such knowledge in practice. So you've gotten it, and then you have realized it in practice. You're living it. It's what we want. We don't want to just hear this stuff. This isn't just like, oh yeah, sure, it's very interesting. No, it's not just like, it's not about that. It's not what we're doing here. It's not about like just getting some philosophical knowledge, impress your friends with your knowledge of yoga philosophy. No, the idea is so you be able to perceive the pure self. You be able to perceive your own transcendental pure self. And thus your mind will be satisfied. That's the result. Completely. Krishna talks in the Bhagavad-gita. Endless satisfaction. Unlimited bliss. When you're in contact with yourself. Why? Because we are Satchit Ananda. We are composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So knowledge, this kind of knowledge in practice, allows us to experience our eternal and unlimitedly blissful nature. That's who we are. You are made of bliss. That's what God is made of. Eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So when you're completely in touch with your pure self, you're in touch with pure bliss. Again, so much better than everything you were trying to get out of the material world, out of that chocolate cake and sex with that person and that movie. All that pleasure you're trying to get from matter at such great cost doesn't get anywhere near the bliss of spiritual knowledge, the bliss of spiritual love, of bhakti. Okay, now let's read the purport. As explained in Bhagavad-gita, one whose mind is free from material desire becomes disinterested in demigod worship. So this is a big topic in Bhagavad-gita, big topic in yoga. Why? Because again, knowledge of the Vedas, the conclusive knowledge of the Vedas, when we reach this level of the Vedas, Vedanta, yoga, on this level, you've left behind the other aspect of the Vedas, which is what? The religion of the Vedas. The Vedas, like all the, like you've seen in all the ancient peoples all over the world, the pagans in Europe and the African traditions and, the Aboriginal traditions, the natives in South America, North America. In all these you see a worship of nature gods in different forms. Don't get too technical, but basically what you have is a worship of nature gods, right? You remember you're studying Greek, philosophy, Greek culture, and you had those different gods and Zeus and all that, and then, and now of course thanks to Marvel, we have the MCU, the Marvel Comic Universe. Then you have, Thor. You have Thor coming down and participating. So he's a demigod. So you had this nature of this, these gods of nature, right? Thor is like the god of thunder. So these demigods, we say demigods, that's so as not to confuse with God, the Supreme Lord. So when you come to yoga, then it's like, okay, I'm doing something else now. And Krishna makes a pretty big point of that in Bhagavad-gita twice, in chapter 7 and in chapter 9. He says, Arjuna, that stuff's not going to get you anywhere. Because, and he's a very simple argument, because the demigods, these nature gods, they are limited and temporary, right? Wasn't it like you saw the Marvel movies? So what happens? Thor, he wasn't Thor forever. He won't be Thor forever, right? His father was the guy who was in charge, and then he passed him to him, and now he's in charge, and now he's the king, and then, it's temporary. Sure, they live very long for human years, specifically like 300 million plus years is considered the age of the demigods. So they live a long time, like 300 million years sounds like forever, right? For a human who barely trying to get to 90 years of life. So yeah, 300 million sounds like a lot, but it's still temporary. So they're temporary, and what can they give you? Again, they're like, you've seen the tradition, like the Greek tradition. They give some stuff, but it's like it's limited. It's not like unlimited. They can't, because they're limited. So they are limited and they're temporary. So everything they can give you, Krishna explains to Arjuna, is limited and temporary. Duh. Right? But, Krishna says, I am unlimited and eternal. So I can give unlimited and eternal results. So it's like, okay, which one's better? So yeah, you go with the unlimited and the eternal. That's, if you hadn't figured it out yet, that's what you go with, right? So go with that, unlimited and eternal, okay? So there's a big deal. So you kind of leave behind the whole demigod thing, and you upgrade yourself to spirituality. You leave religion behind, and you upgrade to spirituality. That's what Bhagavad-gita, Uddhava-gita, yoga, Vedanta, that's the invitation. Look, it was cool religion. It's nice. And Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita, hey, in the material concept, worshipping demigods is sattva gun. Very nice. Okay, so if you're going to be a materialist, if you're going to not know about God or just ignore God, sure, worship that's the best thing you can do. And because all those cultures, Greek culture, Roman culture, Northern Europe culture, African, they didn't know about the Supreme Lord because yoga hadn't reached them yet. The knowledge of yoga, which later was channeled also through the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims. So before all that, they just didn't know about God. So yeah, sure, go with, that was the best thing. That is the best proposal, go with nature gods. That's what the Vedas are saying. But the Vedas also say, look, now there's this yoga. If you want to be part of something else, if you want to like upgrade your life, if you want to figure things out, definitely, and not keep spinning around in samsara, just reincarnating endlessly. If you want to get out of this, then this is it. This is what you need. You need yoga. You need Veda. You need this knowledge. You need yoga. So then, one whose mind is free from material desire becomes disinterested in demigod worship, because he's no longer like, oh, can I have a good crop? That's the thing I need the most, is a good crop. He doesn't need that anymore. And now he knows that what he needs is to love God and to become free from material stuff. Since the purpose of such worship is material amelioration, the demigods, however, are never displeased with one who becomes a pure devotee of Lord Krishna and offers all of his worship to the Lord. The demigods themselves are humble servants of Lord Krishna, as was amply demonstrated in Lord Krishna's pastimes on earth. So this is one very interesting and important point of the whole Bhagavatam, but especially of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, where Krishna's life is described, where we'll see the different demigods. For one thing, they asked him to come down. They know he's the Lord, and they come down, and there are specific events in Krishna's life where Indra is being humbled by Krishna, where Lord Brahma is being humbled by Krishna, Shiva, they're all like, oh wow, man, this is the guy, man, he's the goat. So, this is it. This is the guy. Of course he is. We knew it, we kind of forgot it, but yeah, now I remember, sorry. And they kind of, whoa, they figured like, wow, I remember now. Because they kind of forgot as well. But now they, Krishna, this is it. Whew. Kind of fooled me, because you're like this little blue kid with the flute. I was like, what was that? But then, sorry, so there's this whole like specific, they call it Leelas, where Indra's like, oh, whoops, really screwed that one up, screwed the pooch there, and then he messes up with Krishna, and he's really sorry, and he comes to beg forgiveness from Krishna, and Lord Brahma does the same thing. So even Lord Brahma was confused. So they all figure it out, and they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. So they remember, So it's very important. And the point is, they are servants of the Lord, right? That's what makes the Devas different from the Asuras. The Asuras are very powerful beings as well. Very powerful, interstellar beings. But they're complete atheists and materialists. They're just like die-hard atheists. They actually hate. They're actually not just atheists, they're like anti-theists. They hate God. Because people don't understand, but there's actually two different terms, atheist and anti-theist. An atheist is like, oh, God doesn't exist, but whatever, I'm cool. I don't have any hatred with God. I just think he doesn't exist. Boom. But the anti-theist, those guys hate God. They're like, they do campaigns against God. This is like the Richard Dawkins. These guys aren't atheists, they're anti-theists. They're like, they hate it. They hate God. There's a difference. So the Asuras are like anti-theists. They hate God. They actively hate him. They want to kill him. They try to kill him. They can't stand it. So the difference between Asuras and Suras, the demigods, is that the demigods are actually devotees of God. They forget about it because they get caught up and they're like, oh, I'm so cool, I'm so powerful. They get caught up in their own thing because they're material. They're still in the material world, and they get caught up in their egos. Like, oh, I'm Thor, I'm so powerful, I've got this hammer. They kind of forget, like, oh, I'm so cool, all these humans are worshiping me. So they forget. But ultimately they are all aligned with and serving God. So they actually become very happy when you stop worshiping them to worship God. They're like, yes, thank you. That's amazing. So they're actually really happy, like, oh wow, yeah, what you're doing is really good. I wish I had done that when I was a human. So they're really happy with that. One who can experience the eternal soul within everyone's body certainly becomes dear to all living beings. Since he or she sees everyone as qualitatively equal to him or herself, he or she does not envy anyone, nor try to lord it over any other living being. Being free from envy and a well-wisher of all, such a self-realized soul is naturally dear to everyone. Very nice explanation. And why is an advanced soul dear to everyone? Because that person is seeing you as a soul. that person just wants to love you and serve you and help you also have the same understanding. Doesn't want to use you, abuse you, like other materials. That's why, it's true love, it's true compassion that's coming out from that person. That's what we experience. That's why such people become dear to everyone. Being free from envy and a well-wisher of all, such a self-realized soul is naturally dear to everyone. As stated in the songs of the six Goswamis, Dhira Dhira Janna Priyo Priya Karo Nirmatsaro Pujitao. Okay, so that's it. A wonderful finish here to this Uddhava-gita class. I hope you're enjoying it. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're just coming now. And if you want to hear the other classes, don't forget to become a member of the Bhakti Club. Have a rest of your day with lots of love and lots of peace. Hare Krishna.